Thank you so much, and hi everyone. Welcome to our first spring 2023 session of the Language Collaboratory. I'm Diana Murphy. I'm director of the Language Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm thrilled to see you all this afternoon. The Language Collaboratory is a partnership for the advancement of intercollegiate dialogue on the teaching of languages and cultures, driven by language centers and institutes at the University of Iowa, the University of Michigan, the University of Minnesota, Michigan State University, and the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Our aim is to provide collaborative professional learning opportunities for educators of languages, cultures, and literatures at our 5 institutions. Our sessions this spring focus on situating language learning and language educational programs in rapidly changing context, both in and outside of the classroom. Specifically, our discussants will address ways of preparing students for success after graduation, as well as increasing understanding of what success after graduation might entail. We invite you to contribute to what we hope will be a lively discussion. Next slide, please. The sessions will be recorded and made available through our YouTube channel for the Language Collaboratory. We encourage you to subscribe to our channel and receive updates when new clips are available. We ask that you mute your microphone, that you use the tools in Zoom to contribute questions and comments in the chat. During the open discussion period, please raise your hand virtually prior to activating your microphone. Closed captioning is available through the live transcript button on the Zoom menu bar. Today, we'll hear from Dr. Amanda Dalola, who is director of the Language Center, and Dr. Adolfo Carrillo, Cabello. Am I saying that right, Adolfo? Ish. Okay, thank you. Who's a technology-enhanced language learning specialist at the University of Minnesota. The title of today's session is Understanding Student Success in Undergraduate Certificates of Advanced Language Proficiency. In our conversation today, we will discuss language proficiency-based language certificate programs, success rates, and their implications. We hope that you will contribute to the ideas and engage in the discussion. And then very briefly before our speakers begin, I'd like to encourage you all to attend our session on April 20th, in which we'll have Parker Henry and Elisa Camps-Trancosco, both with Duolingo, speak with us about language students, from language students to Duo linguists. So that's coming up. So take it away. Oh, and we'll have an evaluation at the end. Please fill it out. Thank you. Take it away, Adolfo and Amanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, for the introduction. And thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. As Diana pointed out, our topic today is understanding success in undergraduate certificates of advanced proficiency, level proficiency. A big disclaimer, the information that we are sharing with you today, it's intended as a conversation starter. We don't have authority in terms of having the best knowledge in the topic, but we are hoping that the information that we do share this afternoon engages you in exploring this topic further. Before we start, we want to acknowledge the contributions of 2 of our colleagues in the Language Center, Anna Hubbard and Carter Griffith, who are here today, who help us prepare a lot of the data, all of the data that we are sharing with you today in the form of a report. So we thank them for their contribution to our session. The way we have structured our conversation this afternoon is in 3 main parts. We want to start first by testing the waters and learning from you where you are, what your experience is with the topic. And then we're going to give you a tour of where things are in terms of what has been done for existing programs for certificate, and do a rundown on an overview of what are some of the requirements that different institutions have for them. Next, we're going to share some of the success rates that we have seen at the University of Minnesota. And after that, we're going to engage in discussion with you about what this information really means for you, for us, and for the field in terms of what can be next, what is some of the opportunities you see based on the information that we're going to be sharing. So to get us started, I'm gonna launch a poll or ask Amanda if she can do it, just to get a sense of what, and I think I got it, Amanda. Here we are, and I have launched the poll. We have two basic questions. We want to get a sense of where people are, and we have two basic questions for you. One is, and this is not the poll that I need to share. So let me start over with this.
My semester is going great, Adolfo.
Thank you for sharing, Diana. This is what we meant to ask you. Of the people that we have in the room, what is your experience with certificates? Take a minute to respond, and whether or not you have completed one yourself or whether there's one available at your institution. And we'll just give you a minute to respond, and we'll share the results shortly, but we're going to get a sense of who we have in the room, how much expertise we have from you on this topic. So again, take a second to respond to the two questions, and I'll close the poll in 1 second. And I think I'm just giving a second more for other people who are chiming in still. So let's see. We have 7 people in our room whose institutions offer a certificate program, 12 that do not, and we have some of our participants who, actually only one, who has completed a certificate program, which is very, very interesting. So before we get started, we thought that we could provide an opportunity for everyone in the room to chime in into one question that we are also interested in discussing at the end. So while we present, we invite you to contribute to a Jamboard that we have prepared. And we're going to be discussing the reasons for taking a certificate program towards the end of our session. Again, we invite you to contribute as we present. There are 2 basic questions that we want you to chime in on. And you will notice that in the Jamboard, you already have pre-composed notes. You can just double click on any of them, and then you can start typing, or you can add a new note if you wish. If you see an idea that resonates with your own thinking, we invite you to drag and drop any of the stars just to give us a sense of how many of the ideas presented are repeated, and, well, to avoid repetition, but to get a sense of how much agreement there is from the group on those ideas presented. So use the stars just to add agreement to any of the ideas that you see presented in the Jamboard. So again, we invite you to contribute as we present, and we'll use this information towards the end to inform some of our discussion. I'll now pass it on to Amanda, who will get us started with some of the an overview of the current programs and requirements. Amanda.
Sure, I just put the link to the Jamboard in the chat, except I just sent it to you. There you go, everyone. Thanks. So what we wanted to do was talk a little bit about what the program looks like at Minnesota in the different languages. And we wanted to kind of do a bit of a search out there to see what other people were calling language certificates. And as one of you pointed out in the chat, then not all of them are based on proficiency necessarily. So I have to give a full disclaimer. I am brand new here, so this data is way older than I am. And so if anyone knows more about this program, which is probably most of you in this Zoom, please feel free to intervene. So the way that the certificate for advanced language proficiency worked at Minnesota was that it requires a language proficiency exam, 2 upper level courses in lingua, some intensive language immersion experience, and I've left the language that way not to be vague. This includes either study abroad, which is something that we see described in some of the other programs we compared with, but also something on campus we have called the Tandem Plus program, which is sort of a face-to-face experience between individuals speaking a language. It required 4 self-assessments prior to the actual exams, and then the completion of a critical reflection essay, and then ultimately the proficiency was validated by the student's achievement of the advanced low level in the 4 actual exams, so 1 in reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We wanted to compare this a little bit with other program certificates that we found elsewhere, first within the Big Ten, and then we looked outside of the Big Ten. We looked at the program at UW-Madison. This is the language that we found on the certificate, particularly for French. You'll see that the thing it has in common with the Minnesota requirements are the upper level courses in lingua, but you'll see that the number of courses is quite different. And so it breaks it down for you in terms of what those courses must be, number of credits, what the letter grade must be, and where the student must be when they actually fulfill the requirement. What we have baked in here is this difference between 12 credits in residence versus credits on campus. And so the distinction there is that study abroad programs that are endorsed by the university count as being in residence, whereas on campus, just means on the physical campus. If you compare that with a similar certificate program in Milwaukee, you see that there are intermediate to advanced level courses that are targeted also in lingua. One of the features of this particular program is that you can actually complete this sequence online or in face-to-face. And so they market it that way intentionally. And then you see the emergence of an actual exam, but it's just the OPIC. So it's the oral proficiency interview. It's not an exam in each of the 4 areas. Outside of the Big Ten, we found some other configurations. So if you look at Western Colorado University, this is based on the certificate for Spanish. This actually is kind of an interesting program to compare with, because what it does is it actually is a feeder program for another certificate program. So if students complete this, this certificate in advanced proficiency of Spanish, that then qualifies them to apply for the Spanish language and culture certificate. So they seem to be a series of certificates feeding one into the other. What this does is it assumes an intermediate level when the student is admitted to the university, and the way that they assess this is either through credits, APIB, or some other kind of proprietary test like the WebCape or the CLEP. There are 4 intermediate advanced courses here that are targeted, again, around 12 credits. And as I said before, this feeds into the language and culture certificate. What we found at Stony Brook was a certificate of advanced language proficiency that targeted a wide array of languages that was uniquely based on courses. So this was purely for upper level courses in lingua. There were a couple of restrictions, like it can't include the tutoring course or any kind of directed reading, and the students needed to get a B or higher, but it was purely based on coursework. So the certificate program at UMN looks pretty different. If you consider what we found out there and what we were talking about in-house, we're not really comparing apples to apples. So we have to keep that in mind when we have this discussion. But from what I understand it, and I invite the participation of all my peers here, the certificate program at Minnesota was actually an initiative that started during the PACE project, which was a project that targeted proficiency assessment in different language classrooms. So this project ran from 2014 to about 2019, and in the various languages that the advanced certificates were offered in, we had first attempts in Spanish in 2014, French and German followed in 2016, and then Chinese in 2018. From the documentation that we've read, it seems that the motivation for the certificates was really to provide some kind of credential attached to assessing the language proficiency of students that were enrolled in these classes. So you'll notice that not all of the languages that were assessed through the PACE project were actually turned into advanced certificate programs, but a lot of the structure stayed and was applied to Spanish, French, German, and Chinese.
So before we talked about the data that we have available on success rates, we wanted to point out some important information. First, when we started looking into this topic, one of the things we immediately recognized was that all the literature that refers to certificate programs focuses on two main areas, which are ESL and interpretation and translation certificates. So not much literature available to count on for this topic. We also saw limitations in terms of the data that programs have available in regards to the completion rate. So this is an obscure area for us to draw on, because there is not published information that different institutions or programs make readily available. We wanted to understand the success rates as an element of potential opportunity for the recruitment process. If we can advertise to people that you can be successful, especially for those looking to complete a certificate as part of a potential job, is information that will be useful for students. So that's the motivation behind getting this data composed. So now to the point of where we are in terms of success rates. So the information that we are sharing with you today comes from 2017 to 2022. So it's only for a certain number of years under which the certificate has run. The total number of participants in just throughout the availability of programs is 131, and you can see the distribution by language here on the screen. We have that the Spanish program has had the higher number of people participating in the certificate program, and with the others just with fewer numbers all in all. In terms of success rates, we also wanted to find out what does it take for a student to be successful into achieving all the benchmarks that the certificate program has. And one of the differences that we observe is in regards to the number of attempts that they make to pass the different exams, the actual exams that they have to complete. So on this table, you have a breakdown of the distribution of success rate percentages by the number of attempts. And so as you can see, the more attempts, the more successful students are. And that's one of the pieces of information that we can discuss when we open the floor for discussion. Another point of reference that we were interested in is whether there were differences in regards to the modality being assessed. And for that, the table that you have on the screen refers to the different exams and the different modalities that are being assessed. Of course, there's differentiation between the success rates that the students have with reading, leading, in terms of the modality that they find perhaps easier or where they are more successful for completion. So what does this mean in terms of the information that we have available? As I said, some of the information we wanted to use as to start a conversation on this topic, but also assess a little more about what we are doing to prepare students to actually be successful in the different programs. One of the points of references that we started questioning in regards to the success rates was whether the pandemic had an impact in terms of having an effect, if at all, on the success rates. And just for reference, we are providing that information in here in case you see a bump or you have questions regarding that, whether it made a difference for that. I'll pass it on now to Amanda, who would walk us through some of the implications of the data that I just shared.
So from our data, it looks like there were much higher testing numbers during this PACE project that we talked about, which makes sense because that tested all students in the relevant courses, and in doing so covered their testing costs. Once the PACE project ended and the certificate program launched, what we found was a much lower level of participation, which again isn't unexpected, but was a trend in the data. This might be due to the fact that there is an additional expense of one of the tests, so the writing test. This was the only test that the students had to cover themselves of the 4. Or it could be signaling something else, which is that there are, as you've seen, many requirements of the certificate program. So it could be sort of a cumulative effect of having to fulfill other things in addition to the actual exams. So our takeaways, which again are just begin to scratch the surface, and we hope to engage with you in a discussion about this shortly. We're wondering if we couldn't perhaps simplify the onboarding processes for students who are interested in participating in advanced certificate programs. If this isn't a way that we could signal to advising a way to help people find these as options if they're not able to consider a major or a minor. It could also be helpful to increase and enhance communications around what are the different milestones that you have to fulfill in order to fulfill this certificate, and is this something that's doable in a certain amount of time if you have a year or 2 years left. There's also this idea of taking and retaking, and Adolfo pointed out how students can sometimes be successful, but after 2 or 3 and sometimes more trials, there's this idea of ways in which we can eliminate or mitigate those stressors that will demotivate students if they engage in an exam and then aren't successful a first or a second time. One of the ways that we could do this is to really sort of target these actual based proficiency assessments in the language curriculum, which I think in many cases is already the case. But it could be a little more explicit in terms of exposing students to this kind of assessment ahead of their initial exposure to it when they're trying to fulfill the certificate. And then, of course, there's the big question of how do we market this? Because we've all become advertising experts in our field. There's this idea that, of course, we are marketing language skills, but these could be cleverly bundled together for certain sectors with certain careers in mind. And we could market that to advisors to help us sort of do that work on a more general level.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that thought, remember, a lot of the students are motivated to complete the certificate for job purposes. So how are we articulating that between the expectation that the student has versus what the industry really validates versus what the different programs are doing? So that's what we're interested in doing. So one interesting idea that we came across was presenting this certificate actually as micro-learning credentials. One institution that is currently doing that is Oregon State University, in that they kind of decompose the certificate and made it so that each of the components are advertised or publicized as micro-credentials that the students can pursue. So helping them see that every little bit counts. It as a whole, the certificate as a whole may mean a lot, but also every little step that you take along the way towards that can be a tool that you can use for your own skill set development and such. So that's one way in which this program is actually doing it. We'll next just open it up for some of your questions and ideas that you have presented in the Jamboard. So let's get to your questions while I pull the Jamboard to share. So I'll stop my share. I haven't been able to track any questions in the chat, so I ask for help here. If we have questions, somebody who has been monitoring can just articulate them for us. That'd be great.
No questions, just comments.
And we welcome your questions. If you have questions, please feel free to chime in. I'm just trying to get to the Jamboard as I speak.
Go ahead, Diana.
While you're opening the Jamboard, sorry, I missed this. What was the proficiency level required for the Minnesota certificates?
Advanced low, I think.
Advanced low, okay, got it. And do you have any data when students retested how far away they were from advanced low? Because presumably they would have taken the assessments at a point in time when they felt pretty confident that they would be able to reach or demonstrate advanced low proficiency. Do you have data on what their actual ratings were? Were they like on the threshold, or were they really far? Were they intermediate mid, for example, or were they close?
I think it's based more on how far in the program they are rather than what proficiency they have. The first test that they complete as part of the certificate is their first attempt to actually get a feel for it. But I think Joanne is going to better articulate that thought for us. Joanne.
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I would say that overall the students that don't pass, it's, and I think Anna can add to this, but it's usually they don't pass the speaking or the writing section. And I think in most cases when they retake and pass their intermediate high, so they are at the threshold. I would say in most cases. I think it would be really hard to be at a lower level and work on your skills to get them up to the advanced level.
Yeah, great, thank you.
So I have more, can you, yeah, I'm unmuted. I have more of a comment than a question, and it's kind of like, is this new wine, old bottle, old wine, new bottle? Are we just remarketing something that already exists? I see Amanda laughing at this, but you know what I mean, is that these badges that you just showed from Oregon are basically a major or a minor, right? Is this just a marketing ploy? And this question arises because of something I'm going to put in the chat also, is that the University of Vermont just approved the creation of a College of World Languages. And I was sharing this with a friend of mine, and we're like, how is this different from what things that we're already doing, right? Is this just a ploy to get more people on board with our mission, our vision, our, let's all talk about this.
I think I'd like to take a step back, Claire, just to remind everyone that if I remember correctly, part of the motivation behind the certificate was to try to recruit those students who couldn't complete a major or a minor, but yet they had some courses that could count towards that. So it was, in a way, a recruitment strategy, right? Like, how do you get people who cannot really do majors, cannot do minors because the programs are so full, the credits just won't work for them, but it still reel them in a way. So certificate was one of the answers. So I agree with you, but just wanted to provide some perspective.
I'm not critiquing it. I think we need new ploys for recruitment strategies. I'm saying this is just fascinating that this is kind of what's happening in our profession right now, given what UVM is doing and what, these badges that you see at Oregon in particular. I think a certificate program makes a ton of sense, as, students are not able to fit in a major or a minor. Why not have a certificate program? I think it's a fantastic idea. And I think rebranding a program as a college of languages that's supposed to be more interdisciplinary is great, but it's just so interesting to me. That's basically a comment, not a question or a critique.
No, and I wasn't taking it that way. I think I'll pass it on to Joanne, and then I invite everyone to chime in with a question that we have from Angela. Joanne.
Yeah, I agree with what Adolfo said as far as what the motivation was for the certificate. And I'll also add that, I think statistics show that a lot of majors and especially minors do not reach the advanced low level in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And so it was supposed to be sort of this, really, to reach advanced low is a really something that you should be really proud of if you've reached that level of proficiency.
Magara, you have your hand up.
Hi, everybody. I'm teaching Japanese at the UW, University of Wisconsin, River Falls. And our program, instead of, first of all, many universities nowadays, they are talking about certificate. Not only limited to the language education field, but certificate. And what I was told is it's because it's easier and cheaper to implement certificate rather than offering the full-on minor major. Anyway, so in our curriculum, in our program, we decided to go with the global seal of biliteracy. So we're not giving the certificate, but at the end of each semester, all the students, well, the program gonna pay, but all the students gonna take the Avant stamp test. Are you all familiar with that? Right, so those who knows Actforce Apple, it's very similar. It's an online-based proficiency test. It's assessing the speaking, listening, reading, writing, all on the computer. So at the end of the semester, students take that test. So we just started doing the implementing last year, but then it's what we are hoping it could be a enrollment for the sake of the enrollment or motivating students to continue on taking. And also our curriculum is aiming for the proficiency oriented instruction. So it's great for the language faculties to know how we are doing, how our students are doing. So the global seal of biliteracy, if you, as you understand, if you score intermediate mid or higher in each single skills, then you are qualified for the global seal of biliteracy. So after the 2 years of language study, some students do reach that and receive that, and we are very happy with that. So that's what we are doing. We are not going for the certificate, but yeah, we are offering global seal of biliteracy, and we are developing the badges so that when they receive the functional proficiency, then here you can get this badge. And then next is like a working proficiency, then you can get this badge. So students can link that one in with the LinkedIn. So it can be appealing to the job market and so forth. And we are really teaching the students what's the importance of the proficiency. Yeah, that's what we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Megara. I will be mindful of the time and we'll stop the recording for now, but we'll invite further conversation, those of you who can stay.